Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the Fizzness Shizzness podcast. I just got home from a trip to Tennessee. It was a trip to see family, a very uneventful trip where we really didn't even do anything, which was perfect for me. The kids are old enough now where you don't have to keep them occupied all the time. You don't have to keep finding things to do. When they were young, they'd go, well, what are we going to do when we get there? Now they drive. So they're like, if they want to do it, they just kind of do it. So for me, as a grown person, doing nothing is like the nice sort of medium of like, I get to see the family, but I don't have to be busy doing a bunch of stuff to keep the kids happy. It's sort of like being on a real vacation, except there's less drinking and way less dancing. But in both situations, I'm really not trying to do very much. I'm just kind of trying to chill out. So always good to see family. But there's a couple of things that happened on this trip that I thought was pretty interesting. One is that I drove home about 7.5 hours of driving and listened to absolutely nothing on the radio until about 20 minutes from home, and my wife turned on some music. But I would prefer, now that I'm 46, to listen to the sound of wind coming in my window than I would listening to music for the most part. If you had told me that when I was 20 years old, that, hey, someday you're going to want to just listen to the sound of like wind coming in the window, I think that I would have found that unfathomable. At that time, I would start music before I started my car. So the idea that I can just listen to nothing for so many hours, I find it peaceful. You know, there's something that I heard one time about people in this day and age that have cell phones, is that part of the reason that they are addicted to using the cell phone so much is because it keeps them from feeling alone, that there's always somebody to connect with. If you pick up your phone, you can always say hi to somebody. You can read messages that people are posting. You never really feel totally alone whenever you have a cell phone. But for me, growing up, obviously, in an era that did not have cell phones, I kind of like that feeling of being alone. I like being alone with my thoughts, the good ones and the scary ones. So listening to nothing but wind, it doesn't feel like I'm alone. It doesn't feel weird. It actually feels somewhat calming and peaceful to me to not listen to anything whatsoever. Sometimes I get worried that as much as I see my kids holding their phones, that they're not going to know how to process those times whenever they are by themselves and they don't have a phone. I think that it's going to make them anxious, not because they can't talk to their friends, but because they can't talk to somebody, because there's nobody to talk to. I think it's a good thing sometimes to have nobody to talk to, so you can just wallow in your own mess, your own mental mess. And I think you learn a lot about yourself by those types of moments, by processing the bad, by processing the good, everything in between. I kind of like the feeling of just being alone the older that I get. That could also be just me turning into an old curmudgeon, just a grumpy guy. But so that was one thing. The other thing was I made a YouTube short. And after I posted the YouTube short, somebody left a genius comment on my video. And they said, when the hell are you talking about, man? And I thought it was absolutely perfect, because sometimes a short, trying to squeeze out an idea within 8 or 10 seconds, maybe doesn't get the whole point across. So I wanted to talk to you about that video today. The video was very simple. All I was trying to get a point across was the point that the world, your friends, your family, strangers, generally don't want you to succeed at the thing that you are trying to do. They don't want you to be successful. They don't want you to reach your goals. They want you to have a little bit of success, but they don't actually want you to get where you want to go. Because if you do that, then it instinctively shines a light back on the things that they have not accomplished. That's a little bit of human nature. When you see somebody else that's doing well, one of the first things I tend to think of is like, man, why am I not there? It's just something that I've always thought. As a competitive person, I always think like, man, I should be where they're at, and I'm not. I'm happy for them to an extent, but a part of me just thinks like, man, like I've really blown it here. The world does not want you to succeed to your fullest potential, and it will spend time to try to keep you from reaching that. It's not concerned if you fail at the thing that you are doing. In fact, it would prefer that you probably fail at the thing that you're doing, of course, with a sympathetic tone. Sorry about that. That didn't work out. But in reality, in the back of everybody's minds, there's a little bit of relief that you didn't get what you were trying to get, because then that would put pressure on them to have to put more effort and energy into the thing that they're trying to get. It's funny though, because the whole point of the video was I was saying, while everybody around you is more fearful of your success, when we are trying to do something new, when we are trying to reach new heights and accomplish new goals, we are more scared, more fearful of the failure than we are of succeeding. And that seems very backwards to me. That we are spending more time and energy thinking about we can't do it. All of the reasons that we are going to trip up and not accomplish the thing we're trying to accomplish. Meanwhile, everybody around us, the world around us, is too busy. They're busy worrying about what happens if we do accomplish the thing that we're trying to accomplish. It puts very little thought into what happens if we fail. So a lot of the reason that we don't get anywhere with these things that we want to accomplish is because we don't think like the world thinks. We don't spend time thinking about, oh no, what's going to happen if I succeed? We spend time thinking about what happens whenever I inevitably fail, which of course leads us to inaction and eventually just kind of pussing out of either starting or getting very far, putting much into it. And so it just struck me as odd, the way that we think about our potential and what we want to do with our lives, and the way that we view ourselves and what we can do is so much different than the rest of the world and the way that it views our potential and what it can do, what we can do. The world is not a competitive place to a certain point. The world does not want to compete against you at your fullest potential. The way that the world and everybody around you competes with you is by hoping that you don't actually reach your full potential. It's easier to beat somebody that isn't very good at what they're doing. It's easy to beat somebody that is not putting all of their effort and energy into the thing that they are trying to accomplish. That's how the world wants to beat us. They don't want to beat us at our best. They want to beat us at our half best or at our worst. If we put more into the things that we're trying to do, then in order for the world to be able to compete with us, that it's going to have to put more into what they are doing. And for a world that likes to be comfortable, that is not a good situation for them. So it will spend more time thinking about what happens if they succeed, trying to poo-poo our potential. At the same time, to help them out, we are spending time thinking about what happens if we are a failure. All of the reasons why we shouldn't even try the thing that we want to try. We're essentially holding their hand as teammates, working together to make sure that we don't get what we are trying to get. So my video was simply to point out the hypocrisy, our own hypocrisy, that as much as we want certain things in our life, we sure have a funny way of going about it with the way that we view it, with the way that we think about it. What if we started thinking like the rest of the world thinks and stop being scared of what happens when we fail and start being more scared about what happens if we succeed? I think we'll find that if we do that, we'll actually succeed a lot more and fail a lot less.